Hillary Clinton typically says very predictable things, but recently she said something unexpected and interesting. In an interview with The Guardian, Hillary Clinton warned that mass immigration into Europe may need to slow down because it is driving a rise in political extremism and volatility. And she's onto something. When governments adamantly refuse to listen to the public may start looking for alternatives. Now, many on the left are attacking Hillary Clinton for her flash of insight. One person who is not is Angela Nagle. She just wrote maybe the most interesting piece in the last 6 months. It's called The Left Case Against Open Borders, and she joins us tonight. Angela Nagle, thank you for coming on. I'll say I have no idea what the rest of your politics are, but I thought this was such a smart and brave piece. I can't imagine what kind of reaction you got to it. But tell me if I'm mischaracterizing it. You're making the case that open borders may harm low-wage workers in the country whose borders are open. Is that a fair statement of what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, I think it's kind of a disaster for working people on both sides. Countries that have a lot of problems with, emigration, with brain drain,
yes,
simply can't keep their professional class. And then the countries that migrants tend to move to, I mean, there's low-wage migrants, and it's not their fault. We shouldn't blame the migrants, but we really need to start putting pressure on businesses and employers. The conversation has all been around ICE and the border, but the truth is, if you don't put a lot of pressure on the employers, the migration situation is going to continue to be in a state of crisis.
Well, I agree with that. And one of the most bewildering things in the last couple of years is watching, not people on the actual left, I think you're on the actual left, but the sort of American liberal left, taking the side of Tyson's Chicken or some other big employer, in effect. When did that happen? When did that change take place?
I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but like a lot of these things, there is this kind of bubble around the media class who change a position on something overnight, and then the rest of the world wakes up and finds that this moral taboo has been erected kind of overnight. But as I said in the piece, billionaire-funded free market think tanks have been churning out open borders ideology for years now, and it's a shame that that people who should be offering an alternative that places the lot of workers at its center, but also the relationship between the kind of like almost imperial relationship between the big world-dominating economies and others. I mean, right now we're seeing this really tragic situation on the border. And the thing is, I defend in the piece America's right to have borders and to have a sovereign nation.
Right.
But, Trump was supposed to be the America First guy. And the truth is that, a lot of time with American foreign policy, America is not respecting the sovereignty of other nations, whether it's through, military interventions in the Middle East or economic interventions in Latin America. And we're seeing the consequences of that now. But it's just a very shallow debate where we just...
I agree. I can't believe I'm agreeing with you, but I am. And I respect your braveness. I'm sure you took a lot of heat for this, but I hope that it starts a much-needed conversation.
I hope so,
on the left. Thank you, Angela Nagle. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Democratic Socialists of America held their annual convention in Atlanta over the weekend. As you might expect from a socialist event, there were hints of totalitarianism from the very beginning. Upon arrival, socialists were given the rules: no clapping, no talking to cops, and no aggressive scents.
First of all, in this room, I see that no one's clapping for me. It could be because I'm not engaging, but it also is because everyone's doing this. And that's really important, because those loud bursts of noise, even though this is a noisy space, when we can do something like reducing that, that's really important. So please don't clap, shoot up these. You have to have your credentials at all time. We're not trying to be jerks, but there are right-wing infiltrators who are trying to get in here. Don't really talk to anybody who doesn't have a credential. Don't talk to cops. Don't talk to MAGA. We're almost there. There's also in Piedmont 8, a completely quiet room. One thing to note there, please don't go into that space with anything that's like an aggressive scent, for instance, right? Try to be chill, right? Take a deep breath. And feel better before you say anything.
So at a traditional socialist convention, comrades would applaud Stalin, for example, for half an hour. But at the DSA convention, they were obediently silent.
Could you all give one more round of ASL applause for our fantastic speakers? We are so lucky to have you in the socialist movement.
But for some, the silence wasn't enough. When the floor was open for comments, the complaints began to roll in. Watch this.
Quick point of privilege. Quick point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Guys, first of all, James Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. I just want to say, can we please keep the chatter to a minimum? I'm one of the people who's very, very prone to sensory overload. There's a lot of whispering and chatter going on. It's making it very difficult for me to focus. Please, can we just, I know we're all fresh and ready to go, but can we please just keep the chatter to a minimum? It's affecting my ability to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, is there a speaker against name, chapter, pronoun?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
No gendered language. The guy, or person we should say, complaining about sensory overload was a guy called James Jackson. He's a self-described socialist from Sacramento. Jackson was complaining about the noise. It was something of a theme for the weekend.
I have already asked people to be mindful of the chatter of their comrades who are sensitive to sensory overload, and that goes double for the heckling and the hissing. It is also triggering to my anxiety. Like, the be comradely isn't just for, like, you know, let's keep things civil or whatever. It's so that people aren't going to get triggered and so that it doesn't affect their performance as a delegate.
So it used to be when the proletariat gathered for a convention, they talked about how to liberate the proletariat. But now they talk about triggering James's anxiety. Things have changed a lot. We'll have more of that video in just a moment. But first tonight, Angela Nagle is the author of the book Kill All Normies, Online Culture Wars from 4chan and Tumblr to Trump and the Alt-Right. She is a keen observer of the political left, a member of it, in fact, and she joins us tonight. Angela, thanks very much for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to be fair. And I, you know, obviously there are freaks at every kind of political event, and I don't think that James Jackson from Sacramento was every Democratic socialist. But I'm wondering, how influential is this group on the left right now? Is it worth paying attention to what they say at their convention?
Definitely. I mean, cranks have always been around on the left. I mean, Orwell wrote about this a long time ago. But the difference here, I suppose, is that the DSA was a relatively small organization. Its original founding Michael Harrington was one of the founders, had roots in actually the Catholic workers movement. So it's changed a lot just in the last 2 years. And there was a huge influx of people kind of after the 2016 elections. And part of the DSA's the kind of idea of the DSA, I guess, is that they do want to influence the Democratic Party. They want to be a kind of an external left wing, if you like, of the Democratic Party. And you can see how they have influenced its ideas. Now, many of their economic ideas are ones that I totally support and are actually very popular. Medicare for all, a wealth tax, and so on. And actually, if they would just stick to those economic issues, they would kind of have this in the bag, because they have a whole set now of issues that the public has moved to the left on economics. The problem is that they have to wrap it in this stuff that you've just seen, to the point where for example, if I tried to join the DSA, I'm sure they would just screech me out of the place. I wouldn't be able to, and I know so many people who have left, who were members before this influx happened. They have this culture of like purging everyone, but this is something that seems to happen to every campaign on the left and every organization on the left.
I would think what's so baffling is, so they're socialists, democratic socialists, so they claim they're non-totalitarian. So you would think that their main concern would be the plight of working people who really are in trouble in America. Look at the suicide rate. We talked about it in the open. And yet when they get up there, it seems like a bunch of rich kids almost in therapy whining about their triggers and their anxieties and their gender. Like, who cares? What? These don't seem like people who are concerned about America's working class to me.
Yeah, and I watched some of the full clip, and they were talking a lot about their invisible disabilities, which is very convenient because, of course, you can't say that they don't have one. You just have to allow them to shout at you. And, you know, the only invisible disability they have is like bourgeois narcissism.
So, bourgeois narcissism is I mean, I don't think if I spent a year trying to think of a better description, I could come up with anything more precise than that. Can you just savor for 20 seconds the irony of a group of democratic socialists besought with bourgeois narcissism?
I know, but I'm sure for people on the right this is hilarious and it's probably gold. But for me, I mean, I just find it just unbearably sad because I've seen this happen over and over again with countless political parties, campaigns. It seems to be almost impossible for good people within the organization to stand up to these people and stop it happening. And now it's too late. I mean, could you honestly, could any normal person sit in that room? I don't think so.
No. Could any normal person sit in that room? No. Angela Nagle, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks.
So if Lenin or Trotsky had showed up to rally the proletariat at the DSA convention, they probably would not have been allowed to take the stage. As one person explained, the right to speak at the DSA convention is determined based on sex and skin color.
Second, we'll be using progressive stack. Marshals will be at each mic to kind of negotiate progressive stack. We know that not every oppression is visible, so you know, we will have people at each mic to think about who's already spoken before, gender, race, ability, orientation, and more.